Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the September 11th, 2023 special Troy City Council meeting. I'll call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call from Ms. Stewart.
Mayor Baker,
Here.
Councilmember Abraham,
Here.
Councilmember Brooks,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Krianga,
Here.
Councilmember Erickson Galt,
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton,
Here.
Councilmember Hoderick.
Here.
All present this evening. First up on the agenda, as you know, our special agenda is public comment. We have one person signed up for public comment this evening. Fabrice, please, you know the rules. Same rules apply in here as they do in the other room. As a reminder, that microphone's not amplified for us, but please do speak into it because it's what goes out to the transmission so everyone can hear. If you need to adjust it, go ahead. Otherwise, have at it.
Great. Well, first, thank you to the Safe Troy slate candidates for City Council, including Bharat Chanda, who's here today, as well as Council members Erickson, Galt, and Brooks for raising the profile of sustainability in Troy as part of their platform for campaign for City Council elections. I'm glad the city is hosting this meeting. The Carlisle report prepared last month, which is part of the agenda packet today, advocates that the city develop a sustainability plan, and the EECBG grant would provide the funds to do so. I think this could be a great framework to guide the city's future actions. And over the weekend, I and other residents have had conversations with the majority of council members to advocate for the creation of a sustainability committee as part of the creation of a plan and any future steps the city takes. And a draft resolution to create such a committee that residents developed is part of the agenda packet. Afterwards, this meeting, our resident group will be meeting to discuss what you do here tonight and how we should respond. Given time constraints, I just want to focus on making one point. As you now discuss the Carlisle report, I challenge you to identify any of the 5 city sustainability plans in there that was produced mostly by staff and consultants as a sort of inside government job. Set aside the Lansing plan, which Carlisle describes as more of a marketing document than a policy guide. Now, there's 2 other plans, Detroit and Grand Rapids, that were written by or with one or more local climate NGOs with broad community participation, but I don't know of an obvious local partner NGO like that here in Troy. So what's left? Well, Kalamazoo adopted a sustainability plan last year, and in a city with a population lower than Troy's, with a median household income less than half of Troy's, one of the first steps of their process was, quote, an advisory committee was formed with internal city staff and external stakeholders. This group helped set guiding principles and inform the major topics, themes, and goals. There was also extensive community engagement through a survey and focus groups there in Kalamazoo. Also, the Sterling Heights Sustainability Plan was developed entirely by its Sustainability Commission, although seemingly with limited community engagement. Woody Gontina may be coming later today from Royal Oak, and while it's not in the Carlisle report, Royal Oak's Environmental Advisory Board was critical to the creation of its sustainability plan, and there he is right here. I would also add, Woody has assisted surrounding cities to Troy with their sustainability initiatives, and I think he'd tell Troy the long-term interests of our city require moving forward boldly on this. So if we want to produce a plan, creating a body like a committee to help do that is the natural choice for a city like ours. It's easily possible to structure the committee in such a way as to avoid partisanship. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrice. That concludes those that have signed up for public comment this evening. We'll have council discussion, of course, later throughout the course of the agenda. So next up is D, business stated in the special meeting notice, which is, we have one item, D1, sustainability discussion, which is sufficiently broad and also vague, looking forward to it. We'll send it over to City Manager Miller, though, to kick things off.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. As the mayor stated, we have a study meeting for the discussion of sustainability. And I'm proud to say that, with the background information we give you, we have a long history of trying to be sustainable, at least at some levels, and have had some levels of success, but obviously there's a lot of room to move forward. And we're here, staff, to listen to council so you can give us advice and direction on where to go. And with that, I am going to turn the floor over to Bob Bruner, Deputy City Manager, who's going to go through a short PowerPoint and sort of outline where we've been, where we are at right now, and where we would like to go. And that's where you guys come in, where you want to go.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Mark. My goal tonight is to quickly outline the information that's in the agenda packet. I think it's over 100 pages, a lot of stuff. but just very quickly outline what's there. My real goal is to reveal the method to what may seem like madness as it pertains to sustainability and what we've been working on lately, but I assure you there really is a method. Talk briefly about the Carlisle-Wortman report, what we've been doing with the EECBG program, the Michigan Green Communities Network and Challenge, and then proposed next steps. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Carlisle-Wortman report, which was titled "A Sustainable Future for the City of Troy." It summarizes efforts dating back to 2008, including the master plan, previous EECBG program funds and how they were used. So see the agenda packet. I was going to say spoiler alert, but it's already been spoiled. The report talks about a sustainability plan being the logical next step. As far as our energy efficiency and conservation block grant, EECBG just rolls off the tongue, doesn't it? Not at all like CDBG. I could say that all night long, CDBG, but not EECBG. Once upon a time in 2009, there was the American Recovery and Investment Act. The city got over $900,000 to spend on sustainability initiatives. We prepared some of the reports that are in the agenda packet and also spent over $900,000 on actual stuff, including energy audits of 11 high priority city buildings, improvements for the poorest performing buildings, and LED lighting and some other things that you can read about in the agenda packet. Fast forward to 2021, and we have the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, also known as the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And the federal government has once again allocated, I don't know, billions of dollars of funding, a lot of money. And this time our share is $153,850. This program, this allocation was announced back in January. City staff has been all over it, just waiting now for the application portal to open on December 1st. Applications will be due by January 31. Meg has been attending a lot of webinars, staying on top of this issue. We filled out a pre-award information sheet. Again, spoiler alert, city staff's going to recommend we use this funding for a sustainability plan. So hopefully you see the theme emerging there. Next, I want to talk a little bit about the Michigan Green Communities Challenge. This is something that we talked about back in January. There was a report dated December 15th. It's in this packet. It was in the January 9th agenda packet. Frankly, I had really hoped that we would have made more progress on this by now, but as you may recall, January was also when the BFIP crisis happened, and so that chewed up a lot of staff time and resources from January to April. Then we're into the budget season. Anyway, the point I want to make about the Green Community Challenge, first is that the Michigan Green Communities is a network. The network has a benchmarking program. Last year, the annual benchmarking program had 127 different action items divided into 9 categories. There's also a guide into getting started with the Michigan Green Communities Challenge. That guide focuses on 15 of those 127 action items, and completing any 10 of those will earn a community bronze level certification. It just occurred to me earlier today that this may be news to council, because we didn't tell you, that city staff established an internal sustainability team, and our chair, Ashley, is here. I think some other team members. So we have an internal group of city staff that's been tasked with getting started with the Michigan Green Communities Challenge and basically be ready to participate in this challenge when it opens in December. So among the 15 items in the Getting Started Guide last year was this action item number 4 under a specific category, and it is establish an internal sustainability team. So we've done that. Action item number 5 is to establish an external team or expand that team. We haven't done that yet because we're just getting started, but it's certainly one of the things that we may do in the not too distant future. So although it hasn't been done yet, it's something that we're thinking about internally. So proposed next steps. Like I said, our internal staff team is preparing to join the challenge when it opens in December. In the January timeframe, we're going to make sure we secure our funding from the EECBG program. And then in the first or second quarter of 2024, depending on how long it takes to get that money from the federal government, we hope to start a sustainability planning process that includes community engagement, which was pointed out earlier was missing from some of our earlier efforts. And we're very well aware that we want to do things differently this time. And that community engagement may include broadening the internal sustainability team to include community members. It could include a variety of things. I don't know what, because we're not quite there yet. And then after that, it's as far as the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, it's kind of rinse and repeat. We keep throughout the year. We're taking more action items, and if we haven't achieved platinum in our first year, then we keep going and keep achieving action items, and really try to kind of institutionalize these sustainability efforts rather than have them be kind of start and stop efforts depending on what other priorities are happening. So that's my hopefully brief introduction, and save the majority time for City Council discussion. Thanks.
Thanks, Bob. I think how we should best organize this discussion. I guess start off first with any questions specifically related to the presentation or the agenda packet. I think would probably be the smartest place to start. So if anyone has any specific questions. Councilmember Erickson Gall.
Thank you, Mayor. I think you sort of answered my question. I was going to ask if we know when the funds from the EECBG program would be available, and if I understood you correctly, we're not sure.
We know the applications portal opens December 1st and closes January 31st. We think it's, because it's an allocation, it's not competitive, we think that the faster we can file the paperwork, the sooner we'll get the money. We don't think it's a situation where we have to wait until after applications close on January 31st to get the money. So soonish.
So I just would like to add a little bit. I personally was the one who administered the 2008, 2009 dollars. And that grant program was not a program where they actually gave you the money up front. You were authorized to do the expenditures and therefore, which is important. Then you're allowed to what's called obligate the funds. And then you would use the federal ASAP program, and I can't remember what that stands for, but we would spend the money and then we would get reimbursed, and there would be an ACH deposit in our bank account. But at this time, I don't think it's clear if which route they're going towards. But there will come a point in time where they'll say, you've been authorized to expend money. And either we front the money and do it and get reimbursed, or they give us the money. We just don't know.
One brief follow-up. And I apologize if I missed this in the presentation. Are there parameters for what we can and can't use the money for?
Good question. And there are eligible
They call them blueprints, but yes, there's a certain set of topics that will qualify for eligible activities, and they're spread out between energy planning and efficient buildings, renewables, electric transportation, finance, and workforce. And within each of those blueprints, there's a number of eligible activities. We were asked to sort of identify what path we think we're going to be going on when we did fill out our pre-application, and have thus been sorted into a cohort and are moving through the program with other communities and nonprofits that are focused in the same direction.
On a sustainability plan
Yep.
specifically.
The thing that I really noted is that with only $193,000, we're really not talking about big capital projects or big programs. It's just, I mean, it's a significant amount of money, but it's not a lot of money to buy significant capital things. So that's one of the reasons why we thought doing a new sustainability plan would be one of the best uses of the dollars.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Chamberlain Craig.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question related to this. Could you use it by chance to hire a consultant to help to set up a committee, or try to do a bit of both?
You can hire a consultant, but you would have to use them in a very specific way. To set up the committee wouldn't be one unless that was part of the energy plan. So you can use it for energy planning, which we're planning on doing. And if the external committee is a portion of that plan, then it would be an eligible expense, but not a standalone plan.
Okay. And do you have consultants in mind that you would work with?
Yes, right now we're looking at possibly working again with Carlisle Wortman. They're familiar with the project and helped us with the EECBG funds from 2009, so very familiar with the city's history and where to pick up on that.
Got it.
But I think we would be open to further expertise, because I think even Carlisle Wortman would admit that they have limitations when it comes to sustainability. They have fantastic generalist knowledge, but not very specific sustainability
I'll
knowledge
share
and
this more
expertise.
in comments, because it's kind of a question. They selected a number of cities that they drew out and gave examples of plans, but when I reach out to Michigan Green Communities, those are not the cities they highlight as sort of like star cities. So I just was wondering, kind of, again, their knowledge, their background, and, you know, they're not present today, but why did they choose those cities as examples to show the plans? I don't know if do you know that, why they chose those? They, instead of looking at the cities that you all, city management, wrote a great report earlier in the year listing area cities. Carlisle Wortman picked just a number of cities. What was their criteria?
I don't think they had a criteria. I don't know exactly. We would have to ask them.
Okay. Last quick question. So the proposal would be Michigan Green Communities Challenge, December 2024 is when you would submit. Is that what I
No,
heard?
this year, December 20, yeah, we anticipate that.
December 2023, okay, we're thinking the fiscal quarters, okay. Because I thought I saw join 2024 Michigan,
But the application period, it goes into the next year, the deadline.
Got
until
it.
January, I believe.
Yeah, but I'm talking about two different cycles. I'm talking about now getting started with, so this would be the first year we join the challenge. But then throughout this 2024, we're continuing to do more things. And so in December 2024, we join the challenge again, because again, and this was one of the things I think that was kind of confusing when we talked about it before, is that there's a network, and every year the network has a challenge. So we join the network, you know, send them an email, sign up individually as employees, elected officials, we can all join the network. But then joining the challenge is a different specific thing that happens between December and March. And so I anticipate we do it this year and then do it again next year and continue.
I don't understand.
So, just one
Yeah, go
quick,
ahead.
so it's an annual thing, and same with the block grant, the grant, oh no, it's not.
One time,
Oh, it's just a one-time.
yes, it's almost $200,000, but overall, compared to our budget, it's not a lot.
Well, it's sometimes. It's in 2009
Yes.
and it's in 2021.
So it's when they offer it.
Right, yeah.
And we don't know when they may offer it.
Right, yeah, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, I think it covers like federal fiscal years all the way up to 2026. So I don't anticipate, it didn't become an annual thing before, like the Community Development Block Grant Program is an annual program. This hasn't become an annual program yet. I don't anticipate it's gonna become an annual program.
I don't want to get political, and I'm just stating a fact. But if you look at what happened in 2008, it was right after the Great Recession, and this was a response from the Obama administration. Fast forward today, the Infrastructure Act, although it was bipartisan, it also was a response to COVID and high inflation. And so these programs were created because of certain urgency in our economy and democratic administrations.
Additional questions at this point about the presentation or Councilmember Abraham?
When do the funds need to be expended? You know, do we have a year to use the funds, or what's the time frame?
They haven't given us an official deadline yet, but throughout the entire process, they've spoken at about a year process.
Okay. And how long does it take to create a sustainability plan? So in other words, is this effort to create the plan going to exceed the time frame and frankly the funding from this grant, or can it all fit within the same time frame?
It's an excellent question. I'm not really sure on what the time frame is, but I know that when we've been talking this through and thinking about it, we're really hoping to have at least the bones of the plan within the first 2 quarters of next year. Of course, depending on funding and when it's released and those type of things, but I don't think we're anticipating it taking the entire year to expend those funds and complete the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Additional questions? Dave?
Are there any other consultants we're considering engaging for this, since Carlisle Wortman isn't an expert on sustainability? I'm just
We
curious.
haven't really done anything
Okay.
to consider about what's next steps are. We have an existing contract with Carlisle Wortman, and they did the work in 2008, 2009. We just thought it was just very expedient to have them write a report what they did. And, we'll have to look forward to the future to find somebody who has, expertise in this arena.
Right. Would that be an open bid process?
It could be.
Just curious.
The request for proposals, qualifications, and we're not required for professional services to, we have a lot more flexibility in doing procurement in those arenas.
My sense is that there's probably people in the room who think Carlisle Wortman is not the best choice because they've already got experience with other people or thoughts. I was just wondering I want to make sure that, it sounds like we're heading down that path, that we're not unintentionally limiting a pool of good potential people.
No, you're
I
not
think you know what I
intentionally
mean, but yeah.
removing people.
But I mean unintentionally, I know you're not intentionally doing. I just want to make sure that, and if somebody's got ideas from the community or something about a firm, I know you're always open. You'll take every email and everything. I just want to make sure
Oh,
that
definitely.
people here know, especially that there's no decision specifically made about any particular group, and there's opportunity to have input on that. That was my.
And we're all ears. If people know different firms that are out there, we'll definitely send the information to us.
Did you have another question, David?
No, that's it for now.
Councilmember Holrick?
As I recall, back in 2008, 9, 10 timeframe, it was both the complete revision of a master plan at that time and this that basically established, a sustainability plan. And we also had on staff at that time an environmental engineer. So when the original, one of the reasons I thought this study session would be valuable is I do think it's important to understand the foundational elements that the city would put in place back then that have informed a lot of, frankly, sustainability type policy decisions that have really been positive for the city. There were a number of elements in place then, and it wasn't long after that we had to cut our environmental engineer. Am I remembering, maybe, Mark, that would have been, was that in your department, or was she?
No, I think you're referring to a woman that worked in engineering that took care of the the silt fences, permits and things of that nature. Went to go work for Ann Arbor after us. I forget her name.
Tracy Slintak. Tracy Slintak?
Yep.
Roy never forgets the name.
So, you know, the idea of, my sense is from a staffing and resource perspective, being able to augment Carlisle Wortman in some way is something that as council, we're gonna be we should expect that that would need to be part of the expenditure of this, which I'm not complaining about, but I guess I want to make sure I understand what the resources are with staff in terms of facilitating this. It's a priority for city council, for city administration, our community, but resources are resources. And I would want to make sure that, it sounds like we would need to go outside and that would make sense because the assignment and the work would have a time frame in which to do it. So consultant would be, sometimes the word consultant for some members of our public who pay taxes has a really bad connotation and can sound like we're spending extra money. So I want to have an open, honest conversation about what that means and why we would need to do that in terms of our staffing. And maybe you can help me a little better.
So I think I can. So part of your question was, do we have the capacity to do a plan? And no, we do not internally. So if you look at how high-performing governments work, is one of the things that you do is when you need additional expertise and or additional manpower, person power, you hire a consultant to help you to do that. Because you don't want to staff up for your over-peak work. You want to staff up for your baseline. So I really foresee a consultant really helping us slog through the process, which we don't really have staff to do that. Plus, I don't think we really have the staff expertise either. We have tons of generalist knowledge, but not specific knowledge. We don't have anyone who, I'll call it sustainability cred. In other words, they don't work in the sustainability world. They just work on the outside of it, and they have knowledge of it all and different components. Like, I mean, we could grab Kurt, and he knows certain things. I know certain things. The electrical inspectors will know a little bit about solar panels. You know, we have a lot of knowledge, but we just really need help from a consultant to package it all together to help us to where we want to go.
Yeah, Bob.
I'll add to that. In Bob's perfect world, the committee kind of will end up working with the consultant and those two tracks will kind of merge. Because like Mark said, we don't have like necessarily one city point person that it would make sense or that any one person would have the capacity. So I don't want to burden the committee just yet, but that's one.
The internal committee you're talking about?
It's internal for now, yeah. It's internal for now. But like I said, it could grow and expand as part of this process. But the internal committee, part of what they're doing, so it's 7 members, and that's intentional because if it gets too big, you can't schedule a meeting. If it's too small, it doesn't include enough other departments. So we have IT, Public Works, which is a big department, engineering, which touches on a lot of environmental and sustainability stuff, police, because it's a big department, city attorney's office, because they happen to have a specialist joining us, recreation and library, again, because they're big departments. So the way we structured that, we said, okay, this is the core steering committee, but now that steering committee, you're going to have to go and engage with other city staff, like fleet, and talk about, fleet operations in order to go through the list of all the things, the action items from the Green Communities Challenge. So it's my hope that the committee doing that work is going to kind of lay this foundation that we can then, build the sustainability plan on top of during 2024.
Additional questions?
questions. Yeah, what you were asking.
Just a follow-up on that. Part of sustainability that has, we've essentially kind of had a sustainability plan, if you will, from that era. Call that Sustainability 1.0 in Troy. The Sustainability 2.0 version, the timing is great for it. The free market is catching up to what we would want to do. But for me, and maybe it's part of the definition of sustainability, but from a public safety perspective, the resiliency factor, when we see what's happening with storms that hit cities and what municipalities have to step up to, are we working and being as resilient as we can be? And I don't know if this grant and this program and whatnot, if that comprehends that, but as a policy setting, one member, one vote, I would certainly want that to be part of the consciousness of the discussion personally. Is that, my assumption is that it's not, but maybe my assumption's wrong. Is resiliency for our staff just part of the conversation on sustainability? Or is sustainability about being green and carbon neutral only, and we need to call it out as a separate priority?
Good question. Short answer, I don't know.
That's fair.
It kind of feels like we're in the military. It's hurry up and wait. I think people say that about the military. I was never in the military, so I don't know. But we're waiting for the federal government to give us more information about this
Okay.
program. So, but I was intentional in trying to talk about the sustainability planning as a process. A sustainability plan is not something that is going to happen to us. It is a process that City Council will participate in, that the community will participate in, that a lot of people are very eager to, and have a lot of good questions about what it's going to include. And I don't think we have all those answers yet. Do you have anything to?
I would just add that specifically speaking just to the EECBG, that the purpose of that is all activities have to cut carbon emissions, improve energy efficiency, or reduce energy use. So, I mean, it's pretty specific for that portion of the grant funds. As to what we could use that for. So that might extend a little bit out, it could be related, and as more details come available, we'll look further in to see what we can actually include in that energy plan.
Councilwoman Hoderick, were you trying to get to the point you're asking, resiliency is part of sustainability? And I think it is. Because if you're not resilient, how can you sustain yourself in the long run?
When I think about the emergency training that I went to at the county in April, and I'm watching what's happening in the city, in so many cities, they're equal. If they're separate, they're equal priorities right now, and we have to be able to deliver. Those rains came through a few weeks ago, and it was dropping 5 tornadoes, and I'm wondering, is our DPW director, does he have enough generators if we lose power to funnel the water out of our, these are the things I'm thinking about. And resisting texting the city manager, are we okay, every 5 minutes, because you don't need me doing that to you. No news is good news. But that resiliency, that is going to be absolutely our responsibility, is to be able to respond. If you can't pass a road, we got to be able to block it. And I've seen our staff do that and rise to that occasion, but the storms are different and more severe. So I guess I'm just, it's a question that you don't necessarily have to answer, but I want you to ponder personally, and I'm sure all of council shares the same worries, and to me it goes hand in hand. I think one of the cities, I believe it was Clawson, actually calls out in their work sustainability and resiliency. And that's just on my mind.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Sorry if
get
I'm
it?
just talking, but I know we're kind of formal sometimes. But, so, no, I get it. I'm just thinking a little bit through too, because the block grant is very specific and we're using it for the sustainability plan. So can we still incorporate all of these other elements that we consider to be important for sustainability, or does this plan just have to be so narrow in order to get the money for the block grant?
So they're still defining what they'll consider in your energy plan, but I've already been participating in the cohorts who are doing the exact same thing, and I get the idea or the impression that a robust plan is an eligible expense. Like, as long as we're addressing these, main priorities, which they've specifically laid out, there doesn't seem to be a restriction for anything else that you couldn't put in the plan. You just need to make sure that, that your plan is accomplishing these X, Y, and Z type things. So I think that this could really be twofold. I mean, that could change. They release new information all the time, and it's still really limited right now, but that's definitely the impression that I get. As long as we're checking the boxes for the criteria that they've laid out, that they're not limiting what could be considered in your sustainable plan.
Yeah, I mean, to me, they go hand in hand, and I want it to be a priority, whether it's attached to the grant or not. I think resiliency, I talked about it when we talked about this back in the wintertime. It's probably day to day what residents experience the most when it comes to this right now is the constant power outages, especially areas with above ground power lines is a mess right now. So I want to get this going as quickly as we can, especially community solar that can give us a lot of resiliency. So, yeah.
Yeah, Rebecca?
And just to speak to, I'm not an expert, but I share like the Kresge Foundation, they are leading experts around climate and resiliency. And what I know in working with them, it always goes hands in hand.
Yeah.
You can't talk about sustainability without resiliency. So absolutely, they go together.
I think philosophically, I'm wading into dangerous waters. But philosophically, the concern potentially is our role as a local government. Sometimes I think we should be focusing on the resiliency aspects first, because that is what we can control, and we need to protect our residents that way. And there's going to be pushback in certain parts of the community on focusing too much on what happens globally and what role we're specifically able to play. And I think that's the balancing act we have to work through as we move down this path. If you ask most residents whether or not their basements are going to flood or they're going to have power, that's going to be their first concern before whether or not we're reducing carbon emissions, I think. If we
I
do
think
it
they
right.
all go together right now, though.
I think they
Yeah.
can, David, but I think the issue is our role in local government and what we can control and what we can take care of. And so that's going to be the push-pull, I think, that's important to, as we work forward through all of this, is understanding our roles in city government, understanding what our expectations are of city administration and what we're tasking them to do. At the same time, I mean, obviously there's funding here, we're clearly moving in this direction to do both. But I don't want residents to think that we're focusing on issues that are global, but we're not taking care of pumps that keep their basements dry. And I get emails about that stuff already from a broad swath of residents. So I think that, again, we need to be talking about both, but there has to be a primary focus of our infrastructure here for resiliency. And I want to make sure we continue to talk about that and focus, which we do anyway. I mean, if you look at our agendas and what we approve and do, there's always infrastructure issues and capital spending for that. So I'm not worried about it, but I think that was maybe where Councilmember Hoderick was coming from a little bit, maybe not. But I just don't want to lose track of that important piece too. Councilmember
Mayor,
Anderson.
I am hearing what you say, and I think that's why it's critical in my mind that if not the first step, then one of the first steps should be community engagement. We really need to hear from our community in terms of what they see as the priorities if you look at some of the plans, you can see all kinds of different things. You can see energy issues, you can see infrastructure issues, you see housing issues, you see transportation issues. There are a lot of different potential issues that have been housed in the big umbrella of sustainability. I think it's critical that we hear from our residents, which we have somewhat, but we have 87,000 residents, and probably a lot of them agree that being more environmentally sustainable is important, but it may not be the top of their list. Maybe, sewers backing up is the top of their list, maybe having streets without potholes, being able to drive down Rochester Road without blowing out your tire like I did recently. So I want to hear from our residents, I want to hear from our business community, I like to hear from the schools, I'd like to hear from a lot of different organizations. When I was reviewing the materials, one of the things that impressed me was how they went about their planning process in Kalamazoo. Not so much because I think we can take their plan and cut and paste it, I don't see that working. But I like the process where they basically began it with community engagement. And then they started drafting their plan. It wasn't clear to me exactly when the committee was created, but that was an integral part of the plan. And then they began drafting the plan, and then they did more community engagement and did internal analysis and got all of that feedback from all those different sources. And I think anything we do of this magnitude, it's very important in my mind that we have that community engagement. So we understand that all of the different stakeholders in the community are expressing what's important to them, and that we have buy-in from all of those various sectors.
What does community engagement look like to you in that sense?
That's a big question.
Well, I mean, and for those who don't know, we just
Right.
lost our community engagement director, so we don't
Right.
actually have that position filled right now. We're at a disadvantage in that. And so I'm just curious, I mean, surveys seem to take too long, and that doesn't necessarily feel like the right
Surveys
thing here.
I tend to be biased towards people who
Answer surveys.
answer surveys, and that could potentially be something that our consultant helps us with, since we are short-staffed on internal staffers who have that experience. That might be something that we look for in a consultant, is somebody who has had an established history of doing community engagement. So, but, however, whatever our next step would be, I think that critical early on is to get that community engagement and then continue with it to make sure that what we're doing is taking us in a direction that all of Troy wants to see us go.
The coalition.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Okay, so I'll share my perspective on engagement and, would welcome people's thoughts. So I want to do this plan, and I realize there's a deadline for it. But I also recognize if you look at the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, number 5, it was shared, number 5, the action item is typically to set up some external team or committee. So I am of the belief that the way you get that community support is you set up some sort of committee, whether maybe it is an extension of the internal committee. And it was wonderful. Ashley, congratulations. I'm glad you're leading this work. And it was the first time we learned about it. And I'm delighted to hear that. And maybe it's adding some residents with that work that is happening. I'm not sure exactly what that looks like. The thing I wanted to call out is a lot of our conversation up to this point has been about, do we have a committee? What does a committee look like? And the report given to us is mostly about the plan, because we have money and we need to decide about moving forward with the plan. And I do want to do the plan. But to me, it's like the cart and the horse, and I just don't want to get the cart in front of the horse. To me, the horse is our residents, it's people, and it is the sustainability, it is the resiliency, it is all of that together, and that is engagement. But there has to be some sort of mechanism, some sort of body that is continually kind of engaging with some form of consultant. That is what I've seen in an organization that does strategy all day long, you always have some sort of committee or body that's engaged. I think of also, we had the Green Space Subcommittee, did a great report, kind of like a plan. But because that body was just ad hoc, it developed a plan. Once that body was done, there was nothing else to kind of keep it accountable. So what I'm afraid is we put money in, we do a plan, but if there's no committee, what's going to keep checking in and saying, how is this going? How is this moving forward? How do we assure that, and I want a plan that is more directive than aspirational. We have aspirational in the master plan, so I don't think we need aspirational. And so to me, there needs to be something to kind of keep driving it and moving it forward. And so I guess I was hoping to have more of a conversation on committees also tonight and different feedback. And it's interesting, Carla Wortman, that's why I asked why did they select those cities? Because in those examples, only one, it was whereby it was the plan and then the committee. Only one had a committee first. But when I've talked to, I'm in close contact with Michigan Green Communities, all of their best examples, all of their cities, they sent me a whole bunch of plans and great committees. It always starts with a committee. So that is what the best thinking has said to me. That is what the experts I work with in my workplace, one of whom our managing director has helped to spearhead. Birmingham now has a sustainability committee, and she's helped to spearhead that. So I can't help but to go back to, I would love some sort of committee in this, whether or not there's resources in that block grant for that consultant to help manage that with the community engagement. But to me, that is the community engagement. That's a key part of it. There's more to that, more to it, of course, but it is an important part of it.
Thanks, Mark. David?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I just included this as, part of what we were discussing earlier this year, as the group's example of what a committee would look like. But now, since we do have the internal group already going, I would like to add external community members to that as soon as possible. And I wanted to see if the majority of council agreed, because I do think that's a critical piece. Just getting them involved in the process. I know it's taking on more for staff, but I think it's important. I mean, I've been on council for 6 years, and I don't recall us starting, besides the Green Space Subcommittee, we haven't started a new committee in over 6 years. So I don't think we're like doing too many committees in the city or anything like that, maybe that the city did before the Great Recession. So we have a lot of residents that want to volunteer their time and help the city with this, and I'd like us to take advantage of that and do that as soon as we can as part of this. And they're a lot more in tune and have a lot more time to kind of know like what the state's doing, what the federal government's doing. I don't have the time to know all that, and a lot of city staff doesn't have the time. I know that hiring a consultant obviously is a huge priority, and let's try to do that as soon as possible too, but I'd like to bring community volunteers into the process as soon as we can. So I don't know if that's where consensus is or not, but I wanted to see where everyone else is at.
Can I ask a question, maybe for the city attorney, and Mark, feel free to correct me. If, I don't know, an internal city committee operates, it's not an OMA issue because they're not elected or appointed. If we add external people to an internal committee, does that become an appointment that then is subject to the requirements of the Open Meetings Act?
It would be if it's created by resolution, which it would need to be if you were going to add external members to it. And, again, there is the internal, obviously, city management. The internal committee would report to city management. So if you're adding additional members to that, then yes, there might be.
So how did the Green Space Subcommittee members get decided on, and then how does like the FIT team, do we still do the FIT team? No, but was that created by, I never appointed any FIT team members, but how did that work?
That was created by the former city manager.
Okay, no, I know, I don't want to use that as a base.
It was actually a good committee, I think.
Yeah.
Were you on it? Yeah.
Oh, okay. But yeah, I'm just curious how that went about. Did that have to have a resolution? And then whatever we do, we'll, vet it through city attorney.
The reason I asked about the open meeting stuff is because, to me, it's so much more efficient. This is gonna hurt me later. So much more efficient to not have to follow the Open Meetings Act in many ways, because then, for example, I was in an email with Fabrice, I'll be very honest. We talked about our meetings here, they're not back and forth, they're one way. they're limited in what we do in a lot of things, and if we're adding external members into an internal thing, that then they can only meet and talk about certain things because of quorum issues, and then it takes away, it slows, I think it can slow the process down. That's been one of the thoughts I've had. I don't know what an alternative to that is, and I don't know that there is one that's viable from a transparency standpoint and from an efficiency standpoint. Because if we create the external committee, I don't know how the Green Space Subcommittee operated or when they did the work and how they did that, because I know they worked very hard on their plan. But any of our other boards and committees, they're public meetings, they meet here, I just don't, I think it could be really slow that way, in a weird, strange way.
But when they meet on their own, and then the additional meeting would be with the staff, they could have two separate meetings.
I don't think they can. If we appoint committee members, you can't meet on your own.
If it's created by resolution, it's subject to the Open Meetings Act.
So the team could meet on their own tonight and come back and report to us, and that's not an issue. But if the minute we make them a city function, they can't meet on their own without having an open public meeting and notice we all those, is that correct?
Correct.
Yes, in minutes.
I think one of the ways to think that helps me to think about this is that if you have a group of people, call it a committee, call it whatever, that is advising the manager, that's not subject to open meetings. If it's advisory to city council, it is. It's about the, city manager can, and that was why FIT.
That's why the FIT team worked.
Right. Yeah.
Could we start it like that, as like an advisor to the internal team or to the city, which is under the city manager, and then maybe eventually, once we suss out all the details, then we can do the formal external.
Yeah, I don't mean to sound like a smart aleck, but there's a lot of things we can do. And, I mean, the message I'm trying to send tonight is that, we're working on it. We've got several different things in, sustainability irons in the fire that we're trying to converge into a kind of united effort. And, if we said, committee now, committee today, I'm not quite sure I would know what to do with those people. I think we will know what to do with those people after the internal committee has had more time to work, after we know more about the federal grant and what the sustainability plan is going to look like. So I think it kind of feels like we're talking about like how to color inside the lines, but we don't know where the lines are yet.
Yeah.
And that's the federal government. They, Congress passes these bills, makes these appropriations, and then departments have to promulgate rules. And so, like, I get the frustration, which is why, on the one hand, we can proceed with the Michigan Green Community. We're doing that. That's not dependent on ECBG, but I see these efforts, kind of converging at some point in the not too distant future, which is why, my last slide is timing. Try to set expectations. Say, hey, look, we're not talking about kicking the can down the road for a year and coming back to it. We're, have some very specific deadlines coming up.
Yeah, December's not far. 3 months is, I've been on council 6 years, 3 months is not a lot of time to get a lot of stuff done. All I'm asking is that it's just a priority to get the community involved as soon as we can. That makes sense throughout the process. I don't want to get that lost.
I do think the community is involved, though. I know they don't feel like it, maybe, but
to the level of
they're all
like,
here.
like
we're doing this.
like you think like the contribution a planning commissioner makes to like the planning process. It's like a huge involvement, and there's community members I know that are ready to give that level of commitment. So I'd like to just be able to do that as soon as we can. I think we're not utilizing the resources we have, and I'd like to see that.
I'd like to step back to the Green Space Ad Hoc Committee, but that reported to Parks and Rec, and Parks and Rec advises us, and we have a master plan, and everything captured in there. We as council hold accountable and have done a tremendous amount of delivering on what that committee represented and brought. So, like it or not, we can compare ourselves to other cities. Just, no one is more passionate about this topic than me. I mean, I'm freaked out about a lot of what I'm seeing out there, so where I'm coming at this is understanding that pragmatically, this municipality, this city staff is one of the leanest, meanest in the area that delivers a lot. So what we are charged with as fiduciary members is, of course we want to engage our residents, of course we want to involve expertise. We are challenged to do it in the wisest, most efficient way. We can inadvertently create a bureaucracy and slow ourselves down on a subject that is paramount. And so for those watching who are, why are they hesitating? It's not about, is this important and do we want resident input? It's the how we go about doing it. That ad hoc committee, that green space, was a very nimble way of getting immediate input from people who really researched and spent time and delivered to us a well-researched project. There was a time in the history of the city, I met this wonderful councilwoman. There was a need in the community that needed to be met. We formed a resident group and we just brought that work to the city. We weren't appointed, we weren't, maybe not everybody in the city was even a fan of us, but we, in good faith, in a multi-partisan way, came together to work and established ourselves on our own. Those that have expertise in our community that, go beyond us, at the moment, I would say City Council is the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee. Do we want more advice? Do we want to broaden? Do we want to take advantage of a consultant? Yes, we want to even get better at it. There's nothing holding back people with expertise bringing that information to us in the meantime. We have demonstrated we can work nimbly, and please, if there's information we need to be having as a city, don't wait for something to get set up bureaucratically. We're here, we're listening, we want to know, and for sure would feed that in. So I don't want folks that did know about the Green Space Committee, and especially folks that worked on it, to think that went into a drawer and there was no accountability on it, when in fact there was. And whatever we do, absolutely, we have to make sure it becomes part of our system and that we can be accountable there. Of course we want to have residents involved. And a whole coalition of residents. And when I look at the survey Classen did, it's not even a question, I don't think, of if people think this topic is important, but it's how do they play a role to adapt to climate change. And I think we have residents that will be eager to be involved and to learn and understand. We haven't done our own survey, but I suspect we're not that different from the community next door. Anyway, you're right, we have to make sure it can be held accountable. And that timing is the key.
Little chicken and the egg. The sustainability plan is the map. And without it, you may have a lot of passionate people who care deeply about this topic, all going in different directions because there is no direction, there is no map. At the same time, you don't want to create the map without input from the passionate people, because it could be a map to a place no one wants to go. There's a balance between the two, and I'm not quite sure we're ready yet for formal external engagement, but as Councilwoman Hoderick said, it doesn't mean that that feedback can't come in. It's just, it might slow things down now at a really critical juncture. It feels like there's at least a sketch of a map. that needs to be created. And then the additional support comes in to make sure it's right, that it's taking us to a place we as a community want to go. And I think that's the trick box that we're in, is how do we get to that place where we can utilize in a meaningful way the really important and crucial feedback from the community. I absolutely want external engagement. I think our consultant can help us determine when we bring others more formally into the map-making process. And I would like to understand that a little bit better, which I know might be a disappointment for some that might be watching today. But I think we're not quite there yet. We might have too many people, but not enough structure to move us in the right direction or in a direction. It's like a bunch of people in a boat all with their oars going in different directions. You're just gonna be stagnant, and then you're gonna get frustrated because you're not going anywhere. I think we all want to go someplace, but we need to do it together, and we need to be smart about it. And I can honestly admit I'm not smart enough yet to know how to do that well. And that's why I think having the right consultant will be extremely helpful in getting us to that next step. Time flies when you're talking sustainability,
I know,
right?
I know.
I think, just to follow up on what Councilmember Abraham just said quickly, I'm looking at things and listening to things, and listening is important, obviously, and I hear and have heard for a year plus from a lot of our residents on this issue. And I also hearing from our city management, who is kind of looking at us like, you can appoint a committee right now, but I'm not sure what we do with them. And I'm not, that to me doesn't seem like good government. Do I think we need to work towards this and formalizing it, whatever that means? Yes. I mean, I think that we're there. I think there's 7 people here who are supportive of that idea. But again, if our city administration they've heard all the comments from residents and from us over the past year plus also. They've also had a much closer look at everything else going on in the city on a day-to-day basis. And if they're not putting up here, next step, let's set up the external committee, after 8 years, I believe they're not doing it for a reason. It's not because they don't want to or they're trying to make a point, it's because it's probably not the appropriate time for administration from a resources standpoint to do it. And again, if we passed a resolution right now with a committee and appointed everybody, I don't think city management or the liaisons would know what to do with them up front. So that tells me, I think the residents that are so passionate about it should continue to meet and come up with plans and thoughts. I'd ask that they send them to all of us and not just chosen members on council. It doesn't do the amount of good to send to just some of us. I think that if we all had it, because that way we're certain that city management's reviewing it as well. Our agenda tonight is for a discussion. There isn't an action item on here specifically. We've talked a little bit about what the management's proposed next steps are, which I think are those are a kind of given. I think we could have not had this meeting and said, let's do those, absolutely, right? Those are things that we've talked about. It is that what do these next couple quarters look like? How do we efficiently and effectively bring in external voices to formalize some planning? How do we get the rules from the federal government? How do we set up the team internally so we're not straining from other issues we have as we deal with staffing and resources as always, right? And how do we bring in voices from throughout to I can't remember if it was David or one of you said it, I think, there are experts in this room who have got way more knowledge on these issues than probably anyone here at the table, right? That have spent a lot of time passionately studying this and are a wealth of information. So we'd be fools not to engage them and have them as part of a team somehow to help the city plan for the future. So I think that's an absolute important component of this. But I think that leaves some of the room feeling kind of hollow and empty and not knowing where we're going. So I'm also cognizant of that and also of the time. But Mark, is there, I mean, I think you have absolutely, these proposed next steps, yes, everyone
Yeah, sure.
do the challenge stuff, get the funding, all of that going. I think there's still obviously a thirst for more. I think it's great news to learn about the internal committee. It's also, again, that bureaucratic aspect or the Open Meetings Act issues and how you bring people in appropriately. That I know you kind of made some simplified explanations of it. I'd like to know if that actually is true. If it's just, if they're advising just the manager, is that fine? I mean, there's no Open Meetings Act, it's probably true. I'd like to get that a little bit more vetted if we can. And I don't know what council thinks about where we go from here. Obviously, we know what the timing is for these next action steps, but I just don't know. I don't know what else to say at this moment, I guess. David?
Yeah, I would just say I would like to ask staff, if council agrees, to just have like a game plan for how we bring people more on board. Like, what are the different options? Like, hiring a consultant, how do you go about doing that with community engagement? Because there might be people that know, like, I have no idea what we should do for that. Is there a way we can bring residents in on that process, or is it better to not? Or, as we're building the plan, like, where do they come together? Because right now it's just kind of like, let's just wait. Well, we've been waiting for a while. It's like now we don't have a crisis like we did early in the year. It's like, I wanted to see it happen, so it's still too hand wavy for me to be comfortable. I want to know when people are going to get more, volunteer residents are going to get more involved in the process. So all I ask to come back to us on is, what is your plan for that? With a little more finite of a timeline on that. Like I said, when are we going to finalize the consultant? Are we going to bring people in that to help with that process? I mean, if we put it up for open bids, obviously there's legal things we got to deal with there. But I would like a more finite plan for when an external committee could be, would be recommended to be formed, and then when at least the ad hoc external committee that could help advise the internal committee and city staff could come around. So I'd like a little more insight from staff on your thoughts on that, on expediting that process. Not saying we do it now, but I'd like more information on it.
Mayor, the one problem is we're using the EECBG, it's easier for me to say, as the mechanism to do the plan. And, for the plan, we're definitely gonna need the community engagement, and it's looking like council's really gonna want to have a citizens group to do that. So I'll break this up into two issues. I think we'll be ready, for a citizen group after the first of the year. But until we really find more details about funding and how to do it, we really can't give you full answers. I mean, once we have certainty with the funding, we can then tell you, this is the procurement process that we need to follow. Certainly, though, we can start looking at what consultants are out there, what capacities do these consultants have. Obviously, sustainability, resiliency. But then I think they need to also have community engagement expertise as part of the process. And sometimes one consultant can't bring you everything. Maybe you need to build a team. You write the RFQ to encourage people, teams get together and submit proposals to accomplish that. But until we get our grant approved and we're told the specifics of the grant program, I'm not sure we can give you that certainty that you want right now.
I get the grant's an important piece, but this goes beyond that. It's just like the general sustainability effort for the city.
But if we're using the consultant to help us prepare that, because of staff capacity, I don't understand how we can do that when we don't have staff capacity and we're gonna utilize the consultant, the federal dollars to do that. I'm not sure how we, being administration or the management, can deliver that to you until we have the dollars and cents and be able to hire someone to help us to do that. Because we just don't have the capacity to do sustainability the way that we're set up now. It's no one's specific job responsibility at this point.
I get that.
And in comparison, I mean, Rebecca, you know the Oakland County Sustainability Manager. Communities are hiring sustainability managers. I know Royal Oak has one. At this time, we don't. I mean, ultimately, I'm not sure if that's where you want to go, but if this initiative increases in roles and responsibilities, we're going to need someone eventually who is responsible for this, if that's where council wants to go.
If I can add to what Dave just shared, the reason why I think that's important to have some clarity is that if we are progressing on the Michigan Green Communities Challenge, it requires, and it's action 5, it's not action 20, it is action 5 towards the top, is you create some sort of external team. And so my expectation would be, we are at some point in this process with the plan that we're working towards that. Because if we're saying we're joining this committee or the challenge, it's not just to join it, it's to do it. And that means to set up an external team. So my expectation is we can have further conversation around the timeline and how that work is being pursued.
If you're
Is that
saying
a
first of the
requirement?
year, that's not long. I mean, first of the year is not very far away. I mean, once you get past Thanksgiving, it's kind of, everyone's gone anyway. So we're really talking, a couple months of active time until we're ready. So it's not too long. So I don't mind that timeline really. I just really would like.
That timeline will also give us some more ability to understand the specific details of the granting agency.
I said earlier that I saw EECBG and the Michigan Green Communities Challenge kind of merging. That's not necessarily true. It may be helpful to think of it more as like there's two different trains, they're going down a track. If for some reason restrictions on the grant money are such that it's not a good fit for a committee, then we do a committee on the Michigan Green Communities track. So right now we're pursuing sustainability on multiple fronts. Given that the 2023 challenge is going to open in December, there just isn't time to add external stakeholders to that internal group that's just gotten started. So given that there's no immediate need to add external stakeholders, we're kind of saying, okay, let's wait and see what this grant shapes out to be. And within a couple months, we'll know whether or not these two tracks are going to merge or whether they're not going to merge. The other thing that I want to say is that I think we can give ourselves a little bit more credit that we know how to do planning processes. We did I've been here since 2019. We did a recreation plan in 2020. Had a lot of community engagement. We know how to do that. We have a draft master plan that's out right now that's getting community engagement. And so what the grant offers us is the opportunity to go through a sustainability planning process. So we're on the precipice of entering to one of these processes, which is not foreign to us. We know how to do it. We just don't know what this process looks like quite yet, and so we need a little time to figure that out. Other thing I wanted to mention is that it doesn't seem to me like anybody is debating what to do. It seems like we have questions about when to do it and how to do it.
Sure.
That's not a bad place to be.
No, that's okay. All right, good discussion.
We have 15 minutes till our next meeting. Some council members haven't had anything to eat, so I'm going to adjourn this meeting. There's nothing of no other business stated, so thank you.